welcome back to our last panel, our last session today, where I'm very pleased to welcome Andrus Ansip, the Vice President, the European Commission, responsible for the single digital market, who has very much shaped this project over the last couple of years. Now, Mr. Vice President, we're very grateful that you're here. Thank you. We've spent the whole day discussing the single
Thank you
digital
very much
market.
for inviting me.
Hola.
You're
Thank
neutral. You're digital.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming. We discussed the whole day. So we discussed about ensuring a fair and innovation-friendly platform economy. We discussed about concretely the DSM initiatives. We discussed cybersecurity challenges that are increasingly up in the news, and we discussed, of course, what this means for our economy and our society. And I think it's fair to say that probably most of us in the room have agreed that the digital transformation. Would you like this? Most of us, so very undigital, ordinary pen. So most of us, I think, agreed that this is a major disruption that we are talking about. So the digital transformation, be it AI, but be it also platform economy, be it the use of data, be it the fact that we have now a global network that connects 3 billion or more people across the world, be it the fact that we all have now smartphones that produce data and give us lots of computing power. I think all of this was clearly acknowledged as being a major disruption, a major opportunity, but also a major challenge. I think both. On the opportunity side, there was certainly a lot of emphasis on innovation. The fact that this can drive new innovation processes, that perhaps in Europe we are a little bit still behind, perhaps in part due to the fact that we have a lot of incumbent firms that find it difficult to manage this transition. And I think on the challenges side, certainly one of the big things mentioned was the impact on employment. Be it what many studies find that mid-skilled jobs often come under pressure from be it robots or be it AI. And we released a paper last week, Georgios Petropoulos, the scholar at Bruegel, who also co-organized this conference and drove this conference. He published a piece on the European labor markets and looking at how robots transform that labor market, and finds actually that the mid-skilled get affected, and there's some employment losses already visible, despite the fact that we have actually very few robots. I mean, we are still talking in terms of, you look at the value creation, the value of the robot compared to the overall value creation is very, very minimal. So we are still at the beginning of something. And I think many people want to sort of understand, where is this going? Is this going to increase exponentially? And what's going to be the impact of this perhaps exponential change on jobs? And then, of course, on the welfare state and our ability to handle this. Is it enough to just talk about retraining, reskilling, or do we need to talk about much more than that? A very different learning model, learning on the job, and so on. So there were lots of questions around this that we discussed. I think we have now an opportunity to hear from Scott Marcus, Bruegel Senior Fellow, about a few slides summarizing some of the key results from each panel, and then perhaps we give the floor to you to react, and also, of course, to the audience to ask questions, give comments, and have a chance to be in dialogue with the Commission Vice President. So thank you again, Commissioner Ansip, for being here, and Scott, perhaps you walk us through the main results.
Okay. Well, I will. There we go. Very good. So what I'll be trying to do is provide a quick summary of each of the four panels For those of you who may know of them, there's a group in the United States, the Reduced Shakespeare Company, that produced the entire works of William Shakespeare in 1 hour. So there is some risk that to be or not to be gets left out here, but I think it's still worth an and I particularly thought this would be a useful way of giving a quick update to the Vice President on what happened during the day. The first panel was about ensuring a fair and innovation-friendly platform economy. So it dealt largely with competition issues. Initially, an initial point is that there are different kinds of platforms. They're not all the same. There's search engines, there's social networks, there's travel platforms. And this also implies that a one-size-fits-all handling is probably not appropriate. There are many different trade-offs. There are trade-offs between consumer versus producer benefits, trade-offs between trust and big data. There is an argument that first movers often win, but there are also counterexamples like America Online and BlackBerry. The trends could run either way, depending. There are few EU large platforms. Spotify was mentioned as kind of a hero. What I think didn't come up in the discussion is we've had previous heroes that sometimes get bought, like Skype. So an issue there. In a general sense that different tools are probably needed to deal with different problems. Competition law can address some of the issues that have come up, but not all. There's probably also roles for classic regulation and also for self-regulation and co-regulation. On the next panel dealt with the overall, the remote control is not controlling, there we go. The next panel was an overview on DSM as a whole and progress to date. It was a very wide-ranging discussion. It's hard to summarize it. It dealt with everything under the sun: privacy, roaming, geo-blocking, the European Electronic Communication Code, cybersecurity, the Satellite Cable Directive, copyright, and so on. The MEP on the panel, Eva Mandel, presented a very optimistic view, but also some frustration that things don't move as quickly as she would like. She felt that progress that was made wasn't always appreciated by the European public. The industry participants expressed some concerns both over what was happening or seemed to be happening and what might happen, concerns over whether spectrum management and co-investment elements of the EECC were being adequately addressed through the trialogue process. I know this has been very much on your radar, Mr. Vice President, and also concerns that the digital taxation might have unexpected or negative consequences. There were also, though, very divergent views between the consumer advocate and the industry players, not surprising. Interestingly, there was also some convergence, especially toward the end of the panel, especially on issues like e-privacy. So more common ground than some of us would have expected. The third panel was the one that I chaired, and that was the one that dealt with security, and largely agreement on those parts. There we go. So it identified different phases, different waves in EU cybersecurity activity. This reminded me of the comment that Mr. Strutman made this morning that you refer to different slices of the salami. So this one has come in multiple slices: the NIS directive in 2013, the ENISA regulation, the Joint Competence Center. The current plans reflect a strengthened role for ENISA, but still a focus on its core competencies, which deal with cooperation and advice, yet an enhanced role in areas like certification and capacity building. The speaker from Microsoft spoke, I think, very interestingly about some of the initiatives that they've undertaken, including international forensics and also a mutual agreement not to have their tools used for let's say, for bad purposes, oversimplifying a little. Certification is something for which there is demand, and also a need to avoid fragmentation, multiple schemes by multiple member states that could be counterproductive. The discussion, I think, indicated it's a tough problem. Skills gaps play a large role, and this came up in every single panel, as Guntram has already indicated. So it was highlighted everywhere. On cybersecurity, there's a need for international cooperation, ideally global cooperation, but global cooperation is hard to achieve because some countries have a very different view of cybersecurity than we do in Europe, and the Western countries do. So it remains a tough problem. The last panel, Guntram has already given you some of the key highlights from. An accelerating pace of change, the need to rethink training, more focus perhaps on training as part of the job experience, substantial changes in the nature of work, every job affected, loss of mid-scale jobs shows up very much here, disappearance of employment for life. As far as innovation, that Europe overall isn't doing so well with innovation, take-up of ICTs, of digitization lags, not just in SMEs, and that take-up of digital technology is important for all firms, not just firms that we think of as being digital. Skills important. Actually, Mr. Wyckoff from the OECD claimed that 2/3 overall are lacking crucial skills. A 44% number was quoted in many of the other panels for Europe. Changes in the nature of the firm, the structures, the internal efficiencies, and the shift to scale without mass, the idea that you can be present everywhere without necessarily having to be physically present. And finally, this issue of the productivity puzzle and the thought that some firms, it may be that some firms have high productivity gains while others don't. And with that, over to you folks.
Thank you, Scott. That was a very good summary, I think, of the whole day, and of course, just a sort of bird's eye view. I don't know if you want to react to any of the things already.
Yeah. This was really a comprehensive overview, and for me it's pretty difficult to give some comments if I will take all those points by points, but then there will be no time for Q&A. But if you will put your finger somewhere, then it's also like gambling. It's also not appropriate. Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank Bruegel for very good input you gave when we prepared our digital single market strategy. So when we are talking about digital developments in Europe, then we are talking about Bruegel. Thank you. Let's start from those last points. Last point, so they were talking about productivity and about artificial intelligence. And it was said that this is AI is a specific risk area. And I agree with this. But we have to act. We have to act to minimize those risks. There are some of people just thinking about productivity gains, about how to increase efficiency when talking about artificial intelligence. And we know how it's possible to make life easier using AI already, or to save human lives. Cancer diagnostic, when you are getting assistance from artificial intelligence, then it's possible to save human lives. It's possible to prolong our living time, lifetime. So even in agricultural sector, in the United States, they identified agriculture as a focus area for AI when talking about taxpayers' money. I think we have to demystify artificial intelligence also in Europe, because when some people, they are talking about efficiency gains, then some other people, they are afraid. They are thinking about singularity, about the day when those computers will be smarter than human beings. And if they will be smarter, then according to those people, definitely they will destroy atmosphere, protecting our planet, and because if temperature will be lower, then computers, it will be better, speed will be higher, and then human beings will be not needed anymore. So, but those people, they have right to be afraid. And we have to demystify artificial intelligence. We are using those solutions already. So, long story. Cows, no cows, Max says. In my country, in Estonia, 25 years ago, we got 3.5 tons of milk per cow every year. So now it's about combination between the Internet of Things and artificial intelligence. Last year it was 9,260 kilograms, from 3.5 to 9.2 per cow. It's on the top of Europe, but Denmark is doing even better in this meaning. So they put sensors on cows, and those cows are getting feed, balanced feed, in correlation with their production, and so it works. It's much more effective, and it works. Now they are using the same system in chicken farms. What's the problem with chicken farms? I said we have to demystify artificial intelligence. Today,
And the cows are well?
yeah, cows are really happy. And also chicken, they are really happy. But there is a problem with the chicken because average people, they would like to buy 1 kilogram chicken. So, but if you will respect freedom of choice, our chicken, then you will get just 30% that kind of chicken. Nobody is ready to pay to get 500 grams chicken because this is just about bones and skin, and you're also not ready to pay to get 1.5 kilograms chickens because this is just about fat. So, and now putting sensors on chicken, you don't have to push so much antibiotics through chicken and so on. And it's possible to increase those 30% into 85%. So we can say it's too ugly. Maybe they will put on human beings also those sensors and will provide exactly those elements needed for human beings. But I think those are not correct parallels because people, they will not change their behavior if we, our farmers in Europe, will not be ready to introduce that kind of AI-based solutions. Then somebody else will provide those 1 kilograms chickens, and then it means our producers, our farmers, they will be out of the competition. So we will lose our jobs. No reason to dream about higher salaries. So, and now we can go even from chicken farms to fish farms. Telenor in Norway, working with fish farms. What's the problem with the fishes? Today, those open sea fish farms, they are somewhere near to coastline. And you have to keep them together. And it means there are different diseases and so on. So using AI and sensors, Internet of Things, it's possible to predict when you have to use, for example, antibiotics. But if you will be able to move those fish farms into deep waters, then you don't have to push so much antibiotics through those fish farms. With cows, Max does not like this, but when putting on cows gadgets, it's possible to identify estrus, for example, but it's heat. It's extremely important to know when it happened, and because those first 15 hours, they are crucial. If you missed this, you have to wait for another 21 days. So those are simple stories about real life and why artificial intelligence is important. But when talking about situation more generally connected with AI, then picture for Europe is so-so. So in China, They have huge data sets, and if you have 1.3 billion images, not just portraits, but also profiles, and this way and this way. So, no restrictions. Then to use those images, then definitely you can create facial recognition systems more easily than in those countries where we have to protect everybody's privacy and so on. But I think in Europe we will never accept systems like social credit system and so on. Your future will be determined by your past. In the United States, they have also those huge data sets because they have Facebook, which is famous today, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, of course, and so on. We don't. And when talking about cloud service providers, even here in Europe, then maybe 50% of those cloud volumes here in Europe are also owned by global service providers like Amazon, Microsoft, IBM. So it means they have data to teach their computers. I'm still talking about artificial intelligence. And when even talking about services, about cancer diagnostic, for example, provided by AI to our medical doctors, then once again, those global service providers, they are able to provide, let's say, more efficient services with lower prices, and they will get access to data. What about European startups, small and medium-sized companies? If those global service providers will not get access to some data sets, then let's say it's about just about another data set. But for our own European startups, small and medium-sized enterprises, it's a question to be or not to be. So we have to provide access to data. That's why I'm happy that we'll be able to launch this free flow of data proposal now. This week we will launch another proposal dealing with the public sector information directive, and we will propose also something which will help us to get which will help public sector to get data from private sector. Because when talking about connected trucks, for example, Scania connected 230,000 trucks around the world. Those trucks are generating data needed for public sector, road condition, where there is slippery road, for example, about traffic jams and so on. So I'm not talking about confiscation of private sector data, but about model contracts, stuff like this. I think it's needed. So yeah, about AI. According to McKinsey, 2016, in Europe, our companies used to invest into AI $3 to $4 billion US dollars. They are counting in dollars. In Asia, altogether, $8 to $12 billion dollars. But in the United States, 15 to 23. It makes sense. 3 or 23. Our aim is also to reach this 20 billion annual level by 2020. And it's possible. I believe in this. We will increase amounts of money. We are ready to provide on AI from EU budget. France, President Emmanuel Macron made a statement. They will invest 1.5 billion euros, etc. I believe it's possible to reach this level. If not, then it will be bad, really bad for Europe. So we have to invest more. But I'm talking too much about one single point. You raised so many different points. Maybe you will repeat once again those ideas. I made my notes, of course. I'm ready to cover all those points, but it will take an hour and then no time for Q&A.
Perhaps we can get also the audience involved with some questions. And I have to admit, I also cannot resist asking you one question since you mentioned Facebook. And the question I have is of course GDPR. Mark Zuckerberg apparently mentioned the GDPR regulation in his testimony in Congress, suggesting that this could be a template also for Facebook in the United States. And so I think when I talk to people, I mean, there's basically sort of two views about GDPR. One view is, well, this is extremely burdensome for our companies in Europe. You have to think about, what kind of data can we keep, what kind of data do we have to delete, and, it costs us a lot of engineering time, a lot of personnel time to deal with this, and what's the whole point? So that's one view. And then you have exactly the opposite view, which says, well, yes, there is some cost, but, basically it gives us a huge competitive advantage because we will be the template for how to deal with personal data. And that template will be applied around the globe. It will be European standard applied around the globe, including by Facebook, perhaps, and others. What's your sense? I mean, is it going to be an asset for European industry, or is it more of a liability?
Definitely. It's an asset for European economy. And as we all know, in the United States, in different states, they have different rules how to protect personal data. In this meaning, Europe is not unique, but Europe is unique because we have general data protection regulation instead to have 28 different sets of rules dealing with data protection. And when we launched this proposal, there was a lot of skepticism, but when we got this general data protection regulation, it doesn't matter small or big companies, maybe small, they were not so happy, but bigger companies, they said later on, oh yeah, it's good. We can live with this, and it's not only about can you live or not, but it's good to have one set of rules for the whole European Union. And last week I visited Menlo Park and Facebook, and their statement was quite clear. They will introduce those principles we have in our general data protection regulation also globally. So it does not mean that they will introduce a general data protection regulation globally, but those ideas. So those principles, I think it's time. It's time to pay attention on data protection, on protection of everybody's privacy, because we have fundamental rights. And too often when talking about platforms, politicians, they think how to protect our people in security meaning. But at the same time, freedom of speech. Freedom of expression, free speech. This is also one of those fundamental rights. Privacy. It's about fundamental rights. It's not just, something soft next to security. So we have to find right balance in between those different fundamental rights. And now we got the message that it's possible to use social media platform also during election campaign, also in bad way. It's possible to manipulate with elections. And I don't think European citizens, they will accept something like this. We have to deal with this concrete criminal case. Criminal investigation is needed. Then We have to deal with the data protection rules. Is it enough? When thinking about artificial intelligence, then it's absolutely clear that some ethical principles will be needed. So to agree in those ethical principles, common ethical principles globally, it will be really good, because if not, then somebody will make huge investments, and later on we will say, sorry, you created a Frankenstein, and it's not allowed to use this Frankenstein, at least here in Europe. So waste of money. So, and when talking about this Cambridge Analytica case, we have to deal with our electoral systems also. Today, bad guys, they know how it's possible to use social media platforms or third parties' cookies to get the information and later on to manipulate with some people. But good guys who have to protect democratic institutions, who have to protect democratic elections, they don't know how it works. So we have to work with those issues. But yeah, Cambridge Analytica. What I saw, I didn't want to see. So it was not just about social media platforms and how to get data from to create those political profiles. In the United States, already in the year 2004, both Republicans and Democrats, they had political profiles of about 168 million people and 166 million people. I saw also some figures about today's situation. Democrats, they have profiles of 240 million voters. So they have those profiles, but it's not about likes, you know. But if it's about a combination between bribery, about sending some Ukrainian girls to some apartments, and data analytics, maybe it's too much for European citizens, I guess. So we have to, we didn't reach final destination yet, but I think we'll be able to predict situations we are facing now. And I don't think it's just about Facebook, and then too often we are talking about Facebook because it's about other social media platforms. It's about all those who are dealing third parties cookies, but yeah, there is a difference. Did I steal somebody's hat, or my hat was stolen? But now it seems there is no difference.
Okay, let's open up for a few questions, remarks, comments. Not too long, please, Ishan, please.
Yeah, I will be.
Kurt Geisert from Backbone Consulting in Germany. Mr. Vice President, you mentioned that some people are not too keen to use artificial intelligence. I would like to add a small example. Bayer from Germany, they make farm visits. They have a farm in Overijse in Flanders near Brussels. And in last autumn, on the last visit, they said, we have proposed to farmers, also to neighboring farmers, the use of drones. And the farmers said, we do not like drones. We are afraid that our day-to-day work will become irrelevant by drones. Just an example.
Yeah, but when talking about farms and artificial intelligence, then we have to talk about Germany and Arago, which is a really good AI company in Germany. I'm talking about Mr. Boos. So they are creating that kind of solutions I just used to describe. So skills were mentioned. I think we have to be, and our people, they have to be open for all kind of new solutions. I don't want to say that drones in all the situations it will be good solution and so on. I don't want to get those drones into my backyard. But anyway, we have to be open, and I fully agree with those people who said that we have to pay much more attention on skills, how to train our people. So coding starting in kindergartens already as part of our curricula, then research institutes, universities, and so on. But also in our enterprises, businesses, plants, factories, and so on, trade unions. They have to be also involved, and lifelong learning has to become as a reality, because if it will stay as a nice slogan, then we will not have those digitally skilled people, and it means we will lose in competitiveness. So it's definitely important, and I would like to underline the importance of mid-level managers in the whole process. When thinking about AI once again, then we have to turn to mid-level managers also, because there are too many people who explain this, our not so remarkable digital developments in 1990s and early 2000s with the inefficiency of those mid-level managers in Europe. So they were not just able to understand about the importance of digitalization. So, and once again, that's why we have to demystify AI.
Right. Okay, Antonio?
Thank you very much, Vice President. Antonio García del Riego from Banco Santander. I want to refer to your comment on the gap in investments between the United States and Europe, and to reflect upon the fact that today the financial sector in Europe is not incentivized to invest in IT, being in cybersecurity, nor in artificial intelligence, nor in any sort of digitalization of the industry, which, as you can understand, is very much a vital challenge for the European financial sector to become more digital. But the fact of the matter is that today the financial regulation forces European banks to deduct from capital requirements every investment made in software, because of this accounting definition that IT and software in general, it is considered to be intangible. This is a fact. We have to invest because obviously the industry has to face the challenges of the future. But today, the fact of the matter is that we are not incentivized to invest. This is also on a level playing field with American banks, that they don't have to do it. So my comment to you is that today we have this unbalanced situation. If I may, my request to you is to help us to unfold this anachronic situation.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry, I don't know so much about those bookkeeping rules and how you have to deal with those investments into digital solutions. But generally, I would like to say that our banks, they are doing well in comparison also with the US banks when talking about digitalization. So. And I think there is also some kind of background in some fields when talking about banking sector, about financial technologies. our market is single markets already. But in the United States, it's fragmented, more fragmented even than our market here in Europe. It depends on areas, but it's not always so that here in Europe it's about fragmentation and there it's a single market. Some banks in Europe they are highly digitized and they are using already AI-based solutions also. Banking sector in Europe is, according to my understanding, among pioneers when talking about digitalization of our society. But I will tell to some other people about those bookkeeping rules.
Okay,
But about investments,
please.
it's of course simplification once again, but I think we have to agree there is this investment gap. And it's also because of our history. When in the United States they decided to invest $10 billion within 5 years into ICT technologies, then in Europe we used to discuss about 50,000 ECUs projects. And if you didn't make those very first investments, then no sense to dream to reap those benefits, profits.
Yeah.
So, and now we are on the crossroad once again. When talking about AI, we have to invest because it's not the end of the history. So they have Facebook and Google, and sorry, we don't have. And talking about artificial intelligence, then in China they have huge data sets, but we have experience how to produce cars, for example, pharmaceutical industry. There are, and banking sector, for example. There are some vertical sectors where we have data others don't have. So, and on basis of those data sets, it's possible to create really useful solutions based on AI. We don't have to think always only about general artificial intelligence. In my iPad, there are many of those AI solutions, and then some people they would like to provide identities to those people, to those AIs in my iPad. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe then for robots also. One is working in my apartment vacuum cleaner when I'm sitting here. So ready to join with those people who would like to give AI to a very good vacuum cleaner, Samsung.
Well,
Okay.
perhaps in terms of, intangible investment, if you look at the intangible investment data, we indeed lag quite behind in terms of intangible investment stock in Europe compared to, the German data, for example, look still very weak compared to, let's say, the US. And so perhaps the strategy that is now pursued in some quarters, for example, Industry 4.0, is, I think, a strategy of very much focusing on the one hand, on the strengths that, for example, German industry has, which is sort of engineering capacities, manufacturing, industrial production, and then adding the AI element to that. So how much do we play sort of also on our strengths, and how much do we try to sort of search for becoming better than the Chinese, and something we will perhaps never achieve because it's a totally different advantage that they have. Also in this sector, there must be comparative advantages, right? And absolute advantages.
Yeah.
And do we play enough on our comparative advantages?
Of course, not enough, but we try to play on our advantages. And I think all the entrepreneurs, they have to think what is this mine unique selling proposition, why I'm better than all those thousands of competitors, why investors they have to invest into my project and so on, or board of director, you have to sell your ideas. So we can do much more.
Okay, and Andrew.
Yeah,
from
Vice
UC.
President, great to see you. Just two quick questions, very fast.
Yeah.
First is, you mentioned Facebook, you mentioned GDPR, you mentioned Cambridge Analytics. And when I talk to policymakers, a lot of them think all data is personal data. But what I loved is you mentioned your cows and your chickens and everything else, connected cars. And do we need differentiated policies for data? Should we begin to break it up so it's not a homogeneous entity, but more heterogeneous? And then the second question is Brexit.
Brexit.
I was happy to hear about the German AI firm, which I didn't know, but I've seen a number recently said almost half of European AI startups were in the UK. And so how do you begin to pivot to bring them back in, or to part of the European strategy?
Thank you very much for those questions. How to deal with personal data? It's regulated with the General Data Protection Regulation. And GDPR says it very clearly that data localization, because you would like to protect those data, it's not acceptable. So, but we lost to 2 years because we failed even inside of the European Commission with this regulatory scrutiny board 2 times with our free flow of data proposal. Of course, I'm using those examples about cows or fishes intentionally, but too often some politicians they think that you are talking about personal data anyway. It's not about personal data when we are talking about fishes, or when we're talking about chicken, or when we are talking about car wash machines, for example. But it's so easy to some people to say that what is non-personal today can be really personal tomorrow, because computing capacities will be better and better. But I'm not able to understand what is personal when talking about car wash machines or chicken. So I think this General Data Protection Regulation is good in meaning of harmonization. So it's good because we already had in different member states different rules dealing with data protection, and it's even for big European companies impossible to understand about those different sets of rules. Now it's much easier. Free flow of data, it's also something which is really needed, because picture in Europe in this meaning is quite bad. We already have 56 different sets of rules in 21 member states dealing with forceful data localization. Why? They think if they will keep those non-personal data inside of some beautiful countries, then they will protect jobs in those countries. And once again, we have to demystify that kind of ways of thinking, because, those car wash machines, once again, I don't want to bother you with those car wash machines, but you ask, what is wrong with the car wash machines? No, nothing is wrong with car wash machine, but it's non-personal. Right. So in Spain, they started to produce automatic car wash machines. And they are getting, now they are not making money just selling those car wash machines, but they are selling services just in the right time. And if you have sensors in those car wash machines, you can say exactly when you have to say some parts. It's not enough to say you have to change those parts after every 200 working hours. Temperature is different, quality of water is different. In some situations, maybe 190 hours, it's broken, and then you have to wait for 2 weeks to get spare parts. And of course, you are not able to gain those revenues during those 2 weeks. But maybe in some other situations, it will last 300 working hours, and it's about profits already. So, but now, if we will go on with those forceful data localization trends, does it mean that this producer of automatic car wash machines has to have this data center in all 28 member states in the European Union, including in my small Estonia and in Luxembourg? So it's too costly. You cannot compete anymore. And we know that if it's possible to gather data from really big markets, 300 million healthy customers or 1 billion not so healthy, but anyway, 1 billion customers, then you will be able to reach those higher levels of efficiency sooner than those who have to gather data from small markets. So when talking about free flow of data, it's about our jobs, salaries of our people. It's not, some kind of sophisticated blah blah somewhere in the European Commission. It's about our people. So yeah, we have to go on with both to provide personal data, also in anonymous way to our entrepreneurs, to our scientists, because there are problems, I can even say, when talking about health records once again. So today people, they prefer to travel. Max, born in Germany, working in Belgium. Me, born in Estonia, working here. In Estonia, we have this central databases dealing with personal health records. In Germany, they don't have. In Germany, you have to collect those data from different hospitals if you visited or general practitioner has some data. In some countries, in Estonia, for example, patients, they own their data. And I myself, I have a right to provide access to third parties also to those data. Medical doctors here in Belgium, for example, which seems quite reasonable for me. But today, it's very difficult to get those health data when you are somewhere else, not in your own country. And in some situations, it can be also critical. So today, or in those days, it's possible to use encryption also for data analytics. It's possible to use really good encryption to get information, to find those similar patterns, to find those useful correlations for our people from health data. So, but people, they have to trust those systems. How to regain this trust after Cambridge Analytica, it will be quite difficult. But we all we have to deal with those issues because it's not only about Cambridge Analytica or even about Facebook, it's about digital economy, about Brexit. I'm not among those people who are negotiating about Brexit, but I think those people in the United Kingdom who think that no deal will be better than bad deal, they are totally mistaken. Nobody is talking about bad deal. Everybody is looking for a win-win situation. But what no deal really means when talking about cloud service providers and general data protection regulation, for example, if talking about personal data. So if with Americans we had a scandal, safe harbor scandal. Mm-hmm. So why those people who think that no deal will be better, why they think that those data will continue to flow between EU 27 and UK if there will be no deal? So no difference. Are we talking about the United States or the United Kingdom? The same. Roaming surcharges. Yes, we were able to abolish those roaming surcharges in the European Union, finally. So in Canada, by the way, they still have roaming surcharges. So in the United States, they don't remember anymore about the roaming surcharges, but we have a generation of people who still knows how dangerous it was to use mobile devices when traveling in some other EU member states. What will happen with British people if there will be no deal? It will depend on EU 27 and single operators and so on. Or we were able to agree in allowing portability of the digital content. So if you don't have to pay for this high price when traveling in some other EU member states anymore, then you would like to use your mobile devices in one country. This increase of consumption of data during the first 6 months because of Roam Like at Home was even 30 times higher. 30 times, not 30%, but 30 times. So people, since 1st of April, they can enjoy their movies, music, TV series, videos, football, which is extremely important. Also, when traveling in some other EU member states. What will happen with the British people if there will be no deal? Sorry, I don't know. It's up to EU 27 and UK. They have to agree. So it's a huge simplification that and we don't care about the rest of the world. Yeah. So I think reasonable people, they really care about their relations with of course, partners. And I myself, I would like to have really good relations between EU 27 and the United Kingdom. So we always were good partners, and we have to continue in this way.
We certainly remain strategic partners. I mean, in terms of roaming, I think, Scott, you had a little piece in which you showed that the roaming cost for the UK would actually be much, much more significant than they are currently after Brexit. And so you simulated that. So, Scott, I think you also had another question, but let me see whether there's one last question from or the gentleman all the way in the back, and then you have perhaps we collect 2 questions and then we end.
Short question. Martin de Bie, representing 216, and an accounting firm, also the chair of the Digital Working Group, the European Federation of Accounting Auditors. And we are really looking to support the SMEs in the digital single market. But as a personal, I see a lot of investment done by Tencent, Alibaba, Amazon at the moment in Europe, and waiting for us to make their way to move very fast forward. And I'm a little bit concerned about if we get our own SME in time prepared for this large, let's say, involvement of the foreign market in our Europe?
Scott, did you have a short question also? And then,
Yes, it comes back to the skills issue. Yes, it comes back to the skills issue. This came up so repeatedly today as a concern.
Yeah.
One of the limitations on the European Union is that this is largely national competence. It seems that there's limited European competence. Is there anything that could be done to enable a more muscular kind of European policy to address what seems to be a really quite significant gap? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. But it's really so that it's national competence. It's exactly about the United Kingdom, because they said that we gave all our competences to Brussels, and now we lost our independence. So skills is about national competences, but somehow we can coordinate those activities between member states, and we launched many of those initiatives dealing with the skills, and the skills coalition, where also global service providers are very active, providing assistance to our smaller companies. It's reality, but it's national competence, and it does not mean that from EU level we don't have to pay attention on those issues in all the levels. When talking about public sector, then on municipal level, on national level, and also on the EU level, we have to provide more assistance to help our people to get new skills. It's a never-ending story, but we have to push on that. If not, then we will be out. Then there will be just role of subcontractors for us, and it's not a future we have to provide to our people. About SMEs and the bigger players, I think this digital single market is almost about small and medium-sized companies. It's beneficial for everybody. I gave also some examples how it can be really beneficial for our ordinary people. Roam like at home, portability. We already agreed to abolish unjustified geo-blocking when talking about tangible goods or services bought online but consumed locally, like car rental, hotel service, or concert tickets, and so on. It's good for our ordinary people. It's good also for global service providers, because yes, they have enough funds to hire lawyers to understand about those 28 different sets of rules, but I don't think this fragmentation of EU market is a unique selling proposition for those global service providers. They would like to be focused on quality of their product and not to deal with those differences in between 28 different sets of rules. But for our startups, for our small and medium sized companies, it's crucial to have single market, single digital market in the European Union, because for them to understand about those different sets of rules, it's practically impossible. And if we will continue with this fragmentation, then we will send a really simple and clear message to our startups and small and medium-sized companies also, but mainly about startups. Stay at home or go to the United States because they have digital single market with more than 300 million healthy customers, and it's possible to scale up there, but sorry, here in Europe, it's too complicated. So why we have to continue in this way? I'm happy that in many areas we were able to reach our goals already, but you discussed today also about telecom sector investment gap, huge gap, 500 billion euros will be needed to reach those connectivity aims, and if we will continue on basis of existing rules, then there will be a gap equal to 155 billion euros. It means we have to change those existing rules. And I'm so disappointed that instead to be focused on our future, how to cover this investment gap, how to get to those 500 billion euros. We started to deal with our past, with the intra-EU calls. 2014 already, the European Parliament rejected this proposal because they said this problem will disappear one day anyway. And they were right, because during the years 2010, 2015, for example, in Spain, volume of those intra-EU calls decreased for 74%. In Sweden, 60%. So people, they started to use WhatsApp, Skype, FaceTime. Service providers, they invested on innovations in this field also, quite remarkable amounts of money. They are providing quite affordable packages to our people. You pay maybe €1 more per month, and then you will get unlimited volume of intra-EU calls or data, it doesn't matter. So there are some really affordable packages. And according to some information, just 14% of those people who use those intra-EU calls, they pay regular price. And I didn't say that this regular price, as a rule, always is high price. So we don't know about the size of this problem. It's about fixed and mobile phones. According to some sources, it's about 1 billion euros annually for whole year. According to other sources, it's about 5 to 7 billion. But roaming, it was also about 5 billion euros. It wasn't easy to deal with roaming, and even today we don't know about all those consequences. Because as average, yes, it was a really good decision. Beneficial, we can say, to everybody. But some companies, they are in difficulties today. And we don't know about those real consequences. We cannot make those decisions without having impact assessment, without knowing what will exactly happen with some operators in concrete countries and so on. So we promised to deregulate. Now it seems we will provide more regulations. I'm totally unhappy with that kind of situation where they are taking our future, those 500 billion euros investments, this core investment model, as hostage. So let's treat differently. But okay, you would like to go home, but I will deal with those issues.
Well, please join me in thanking the Vice President for excellent comments. And thank you for pushing all of this.
Thank you very much. I made those notes, and I'm ready to give comments about all the points, but you have families, you have to go on. Sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Looking to have a fruitful cooperation between us also in future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.